Today's projects are sure to add warm and cozy vibes to your fall decor this year, and these are all super quick and easy to make. This video is also part of an open collab, which I will tell you more about later on. Thank you all for stopping by Lavender and Lace. I'm Alicia. Welcome back to my viewers that come and see me each week. And hello, if you are new here, thank you so much for stopping by today. Be sure that you give this video a thumbs up, and I hope you will consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. And let's get started with today's projects. I have a super easy way to update some of your fall decor that I wanted to share with you guys. I had these pumpkins in my stash. Well, not really my stash. They're in with my fall decor. I got them from Walmart and I did not really like that shiny finish that they had. So I took these outside and spray painted them with 2 coats of my 2x paint plus primer in the white color. And I did run out of paint while I was doing this project, so I just had to finish that up with some white chalk paint just to get all of that orange color covered up. And I have these napkins in my stash, and I have done several projects with these, and I just love the blue floral print that these have. It kind of reminds me of some of the, what were those china plates called that used to be so popular? It was the blue willow plates, and my granny had a set of those in her kitchen, and I just kind of get the vibes of that from this print. So I did remove all of the plies from these napkins, cut these into strips, and then cut each strip in half. That just makes it a little bit easier to work with. And then for my pumpkins, I did just apply a light coat of Mod Podge, and I did this in sections. I wanted to be able to get just a piece of that napkin down correctly without any wrinkles or anything like that. So I just did a small amount of Mod Podge in a small area to start with, and just applied one strip at a time. And I just cut off any of the excess on the bottom that might be a little bit too long for my pumpkin. Just used my paintbrush to make sure that I had everything applied well, and I just continued that all the way around my pumpkin. And I tried to match up my pieces of napkin as best as I could, but I still did have some gaps in those napkin pieces. And I did add just a little bit more Mod Podge on the top of my napkins before they were completely dried. This just helped me get those applied well. And any of those gaps that I had left from my napkin pieces, I would just cut out a smaller piece that I thought would fit in there and match well, and just applied that with my Mod Podge. And of course I just did the same thing for my smaller pumpkins as well. And you could do this with any napkin print that you would want. I just love the finish that you get with this, and I am really loving this blue color with all of my other fall decor. It just really kind of makes all of your orange and yellow pieces stand out. And of course, once all of my napkins were dry, I did go back in with another layer of Mod Podge just to seal everything in. And I also painted the stem on each of my pumpkins with some truffle colored chalk paint from Waverly. I wasn't worried about full coverage. I still wanted a little bit of that white paint peeking through to make this look more like a natural stem that you would find on a real pumpkin. And then I did go in each of those segment lines and just did a little bit of dry brushing. I didn't put any extra paint on my brush. This was just the leftover that I had from painting that stem. This just gives your pumpkin a little bit more dimension. And I also did just a little bit of light dry brushing on each segment as well. And I love my antique gold rub and buff, so I put a little bit of that on each of my stems. I just love the classy look that this gives my pumpkins, and that is it for this project. This was just a very quick and easy way to update the look of these pumpkins. am so excited to be the guest host this month for the Cozy Inspiration Open playlist, and that is hosted by Lowly from Lowly D's Creations and Katie from Lady Red Crafting. Thank you both so much for asking me to be the guest host this month. You guys be sure and check out their channels as well as the full playlist in the description box. You will be able to find tons of cozy inspiration there for all of your fall DIYs. And now let's get back to our projects. I think it's so much fun to go into Dollar Tree and kind of mix and match their votive holders with their taper candle holders. I like to just see what different designs and patterns that they have, and I recently found these really pretty wax warmer kind of votive holders, and I paired them with a couple of these taper candle holders, and these were different heights. I like to have different heights in my decor. I think that makes everything look just a little bit better. And to attach these, I just used some E6000 and some hot glue, and I opted to put my votive holder upside down and add the candle holder this way. That just helped me be able to get that centered a little bit easier. And after these had set up for about 24 hours, I took them outside, and I love using this Rust-Oleum hammered spray paint. I just love the finish that you get with this. It just makes everything look metal and made this piece very cohesive, and you get a very high-end look to this. And you can use whatever spray paint that you might have on hand. This is just a really fun and easy idea to give you guys, and you can mix and match all of those candle holders that you can find at the Dollar Tree. And this is what they look like once they have dried. I absolutely love the finish on these. I get really kind of a boutique vibe from these candle holders. And then all you simply have to do is add whatever scent of wax melt that you want to the top of these. And I also had just some non-scented votive candles in my stash, and I added those to the underneath portion. And I love candles in the fall, and any of those fall scents just make your home feel so warm and cozy and inviting. But let me know what you guys think about this one. Is this a project that you would try? For this next project, I went into my Cricut design space and I just did a search for pumpkin. I wanted a very simple shape, something that will be easy to cut out. So I found this free one, and you can just put those filters in when you are doing a search, so you can find the images that are free or ones that you may have already purchased. I opt to do it that way instead of paying for the Cricut Access. I feel like that's just more budget friendly for me, because I have never spent as much as the subscription is in a year. So that is just what I choose to do. Of course, if you want to get that subscription, you have access to tons of cut files and fonts and everything like that. And I also wanted a cat silhouette, and I could not find a free one in Design Space, but this one was only 99 cents, which most of their images are about that price. So I felt like that was a good deal for this project, and I know I will use that silhouette again. So I added everything to my canvas, and I will be making 5 pumpkins, so I just duplicated that. And I did want to show you guys another option if you don't want to pay the 99 cents for one, and if you don't have the all access subscription. I just went into Google and did a search for a cat silhouette, and that pulled up several options, and it even had the exact same one that I had already applied to my canvas. So I just downloaded that and then saved that to my Cricut files and uploaded that into my project. That is a very easy process to do. And I'm sure you're probably wondering why I have included a cat with this project. So, my granny was a seamstress and she always had a lot of extra fabric on hand. So, one of the projects that I remember her making was a basket of cats. She would make smaller ones than the one I'm making today, and they would just be a lot of different colors and patterns. And there would be maybe 4 or 5 or maybe 6 cats per basket. And that's just something that I always remember her having out in her bedroom, and she would make them for family members and things like that. So that's why I wanted to include a cat in this project. It just made me remember her and her projects. So I just deleted the one that I had found in Access that was the 99-cent one and just added the free one that I had found. Of course, I wouldn't use that free one if this was a project that I was selling or anything like that, but this is just for personal use. And I did duplicate all of my pumpkin shapes as well as my cat. I am going to be cutting these out in fabric, so I need a front and a back piece. And I always like to check my mats before I do any cutting with my projects, and I wanted these all to cut out together, so I went back and changed the color of my cats to the same color as my pumpkins. And I don't know if you guys saw it or not, I did flip one of those images because I kind of want a mirror image for that because I will be putting these together. And if you don't have a cutting machine, you could do a Google search for whatever image that you want to cut out and just print that out on cardstock and use that as your template. Or if you don't have a printer and you feel comfortable freehanding a design, you could do that as well. Those are just a couple of different options in case you don't have a cutting machine. And you guys can also move your shapes around on your mats before you cut them, just to move them into the areas that you want them on your mat. That will help you save a little bit of time and effort because that will allow you to put all of your fabric or vinyl, whatever you are cutting, the different colors on the same mat. So I just went through my fabric stash and picked several that I thought coordinated nicely for my pumpkins, and I picked a black and a white for my cat, mainly because this black piece or the white piece, either one, weren't long enough to fit on my mat. So I just made sure I cut out the exact size that I would need, and while I did that, I did have my design pulled up on my laptop so I could see exactly what sizes that I would need for each piece of fabric. And when you are working with fabric like this, you want to be sure that you get out any wrinkles or anything like that in your fabric before you cut it. So I press it down firmly with my hand and then I use my brayer. Sometimes I will have to pull that fabric up and just redo it. You don't want any of those wrinkles because that can mess up your cut once you run it through your cutting machine. Then I just put that into my Cricut Maker and cut everything out. And for the moment of truth, everything removed nicely, and I had really good cuts on this one. Sometimes you get some pieces that don't cut well, so I always like to keep my scissors on hand or my rotary blade close by when I am removing all of my extra fabric. So once I had all of my pieces pulled off of my mats, I did just start matching those up. I put the front and back pieces together, of course, and this is a no-sew project. You could totally do this on your sewing machine or either use hand stitching if you want to. I just find that it's easier for me to use the fabric hot glue when I have pieces that have some of these smaller details like the stems and the ears and the tail on the cat. So I just matched everything up and lined up all of my edges with each of my shapes. And some of my fabric pieces were still pretty wrinkled after I pulled them off of my cutting mat. So I just ironed out everything so I would have a smooth surface and everything would line up correctly. And I just pulled back a small portion of the top piece of my fabric and added a little bit of fabric hot glue in just a small section and glued that down first. I like to use my little silicone spatula to help me with projects like this. I just applied that glue and mashed that down, and then once it had cooled just a little bit, I did use my fingers to press that firmly just to make sure that everything was attached really well. And then I just continued that all the way around my pumpkin shapes as well as my cat. Of course, I left an opening at the bottom so I can stuff these. And I just used some polyfill stuffing to stuff all of my pumpkins. I tried to be careful when I was stuffing them. I didn't want to bust any of my seams. Sometimes that will happen when you use that fabric glue. But I just stuffed them until I was happy with the shape and just used that hot glue once again to close up the opening on the bottom. And I wanted to age these just a little bit. You guys know that I love the farmhouse style and just rustic vibes. So I had some of this distress ink in my stash, and this was the walnut color and the vintage photo. I used the vintage photo on my lighter fabrics and the walnut on the darker ones. Just went around the edges as well as the top of each of my pumpkins. I didn't do that with the cat. And I kept this simple for embellishment. I just made a couple of shoelace bows with some jute twine and some raffia and just glued that right under the stem on a few of my pumpkins and just cut off the tails. You could do whatever you wanted as far as embellishment goes, and you could actually just skip the adding the distress ink or adding any embellishments. These were super cute. So whatever you want to do with these, feel free to go ahead and do that. And I found this really pretty woven basket at Dollar Tree. I love these. These have a very farmhouse vibe to me. And I just added some grocery bags and then some of the paper shred that you can find at Dollar Tree as well, just as my filler. And then I added all of my pumpkins and my cat to the basket. Just played around with the placement until I was happy with that. And I love how this turns out. This is just so cute, and this gives me all of the cozy vibes. I think fabric projects really just say cozy to me in the fall. What do you guys think? And then as just a finishing touch to my basket, I had some of this orange and white gingham ribbon in my stash, so I just tied a bow around that basket just to add a little bit more fall color. But what do you guys think about this project? I found these pillow covers recently at a yard sale, and I knew that I wanted to redo them for fall. So an easy way to do that is using stencils, and I had several of these already in my stash. I picked them up from Hobby Lobby, and the fall ones, of course, were on sale. And I also found the Thankful one in the clearance section, so I think I paid maybe $1.50 for that one. But to start this project, I did want to put something in between the front and the back cover of these that will just keep my fabric paint from bleeding through. And I lined up my designs. I wanted to make sure that what I had put in the center, that cardboard, would be underneath the stencil so I wouldn't have any of that paint bleed through. And I did use some of this Craft Bond adhesive spray. I was hoping that that would prevent some of the bleeding that happens with this fabric paint. I have used this before. It's not my favorite, so if you guys have used fabric paint before and have a favorite one, please let me know in the comments. and that orange was just a little too bright for me, so I added just a little bit of the brown as well just to get a deeper colored orange for this. And I did let that adhesive spray dry for about 4 minutes. It was about the time that it took me to mix up my paint color, and that did help my stencils to apply really well to this fabric. You can also use the pixie spray that you can find on Amazon. I think I might give that a try next for fabric and fabric paint projects like this. I wasn't too happy with the results once I removed my stencil. But I just used a foam pouncer to apply my paint, and you can do 1 or 2 coats of this. I decided to just do 1 coat. I liked the effect that I got. I like to have things look a little bit more rustic and old. I just used my heat gun to help me dry that paint just a little bit before I removed my stencil. And I did still have a little bit of bleeding with that fabric paint, but I'll show you guys in just a little bit how I kind of fixed that. So I just repeated all of those steps with each of my stencils. And I really like to use those foam pouncers versus the stencil brushes that you can find. I think the stencil brushes, the bristles are a little too stiff, and I never get a very good finish with those. And I did have to go back in just a couple of places and paint in those lines where you have the gap in the stencil. And of course I did the same thing for my second pillow cover, and I opted just to put that design in the bottom right hand corner of this one and added an orange leaf to coordinate with my other pillow cover. So you can see here a little bit of the bleed through that I got with that paint. I didn't have just nice crisp lines. So I just took a Sharpie in a coordinating color and just went around all of my design, all of the words, and I also used a brown Sharpie to go over the leaf and just add the veins and things like that. This just cleaned up my lines and gave me a nicer finish. And I just added my pillow form, and you can find these at Walmart, Amazon, Hobby Lobby, wherever that you can find them the cheapest. And just added that to each of my pillow covers, and these are ready to go and add to my couches. I really think these turned out good, even though that the fabric paint did bleed through a little bit. What do you guys think about this one? I hope you're feeling all warm and cozy now and want to give some of these projects a try. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up and also check out the playlist and the host channels in the description box. And click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. I hope you all have a blessed day, and I will see you in the next one.